Yesterday we gave you the very latest about a guy who weighed over 300 pounds and died after taking an amusement park ride. Now remember, he fell off. In the wake of that, the question is, who's keeping track of all the amusement park rides and what's going on? We'll give you that question. We'll answer the question in just a minute. But first, the numbers of COVID-19, as we always do. Since 7 hours ago, in the 7-day average, there's been over 2,700 cases with 31 new deaths in the state. Nothing new in Nueces County. Dallas has 95 new cases, 3 new deaths. Harris County has 5 new cases with over 700 deaths. Bexar has 152, and they have new deaths. And they also have new deaths. 2.4% of positives since March 26th, the same thing I reported to you on Friday. And since the 31st, over 100 people have been hospitalized, and over 12,000 people and over 1,200 people have been in ICU. Vaccinations, 72% have had at least one dose, 20.9 since April 2nd, and 17.6 fully vaccinated. In the U.S. alone, 561 million doses have been given, fully vaccinated 218, with over 66.1%. The total worldwide would have to be total cases 6.6 million, over 87,000 deaths. Total doses given 45.3 million, and 17.6 million people have been fully vaccinated. And total doses have been 11.2 worldwide. People fully vaccinated is 4.5 million. And 58.7%. Schools, nothing of that sort. But BA2 is a subvariant going all around Texas. The main reason is we're not doing everything in our power. But we still have to make sure we follow all the guidelines and make sure we know what we're doing to keep ourselves safe. Like I said before, I'll say this again. I've been vaccinated. I know the risks. And people in here want to sit there and say, we don't care. You know, you're vaccinated a lot, but we don't care. That's being shoved to the side for a reason. What needs to happen here is that we need to make sure we're following these tips like I'm giving you guys for the past 2 years. And things have got to change. So what really needs to happen here is that we have to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I'm a man of my word. I tell you every single case. The whole reason why we're doing this every time is basically because to help you. And for questions, people like saying, well, what type of vaccine should I get? Pfizer vaccine works best. Don't get the other vaccines that will I don't know, be bad for your health. I mean, just have terrible side effects. After the second dose, you could feel some side effects of the Pfizer vaccine. So you're saying you take the Pfizer vaccine? Yes, I took the Pfizer vaccine. I took the vaccine twice, and after the second dose, I had some side effects, but I felt better after taking a Tylenol. Mind you, at my part-time job, I was going to call in sick, but at that time, it never happened. Because I did what I had to do to make sure that I didn't want to keep myself from work a lot. So, again, what I've always said to you is masks. These are very important. The type of masks you should get is the ones with the metal ones. I like this one because it's a message. Keep calm, stay 6 feet for those who are unvaccinated. It should be like this. Not like this. Also, social distance, 6 feet or more. Disinfect your area a lot with Lysol and disinfectant wipes. Hand washing, very important. Wash your hands, sanitize your hands. There's hand sanitizer stations. If you're ready to jump station until February 18th, make sure you're vaccinated. If you're quarantined, you need to make sure you stay home. If you're under 2, no mask. If you have a medical condition, let your doctor know. If you're qualified for the booster shot, get the booster shot. If you have COVID, just get the vaccine. If you're already been vaccinated but got COVID, get the booster shot. If you haven't already, get vaccinated. Let's do our part here. Alright, coming up next. How safe are these amusement park rides? In the wake of the accident that happened in Atlanta, Florida days ago, you're going to meet a woman who made a law in the state of California which says they have to report accidents. But one state is exempt from that. And we'll tell you when we come back. Up front tonight, a Give Me a Break investigation into amusement park rides. Now, if you went to Orlando, Florida, or Six Flags Fiesta, Texas, you may know about these rides. Or if you went to SeaWorld, Disneyland, Disney Parks, Six Flags, or SeaWorld, you may know about these parks. Or amusement park rides. They're safe and fine for the whole family. But the question is, who's keeping track of all these rides? Shouldn't that be a law? You're about to meet a woman whose son was in an accident, and she fought very hard to get the laws passed. She spoke to Dayline back in 2001, and Keith Morrison has this investigation.
America loves a thrill ride. We line up by the millions to take what appear to be huge risks to absorb spaceship-level G-forces because all the while we know we're absolutely safe. Aren't we? If you ask the people who run these big amusement parks, who build these high-tech thrills, then the answer is yes, of course, very safe.
Safer than walking down the street, safer than playing baseball, football, jumping on a trampoline, or driving your car.
Brett Lovejoy is the president of the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions.
We entertain over 320 million guests a year at America's amusement parks, and I think people can feel assured that when they visit one of America's amusement parks, they're in one of the safest places they can possibly be.
In fact, the industry says you're more likely to be struck by lightning twice than be killed in an amusement park, and the industry may well be right. But how can anyone know for sure? Because in several states, amusement parks are not required to report injuries or even deaths. The federal government has no oversight over these parks either. So it's been extremely difficult, if not impossible, to get any real numbers. But now, one woman is trying very hard to change that.
With a child, you can start to see how everything is magical in the world if we just look at it in that way.
It was March of 1999, and Kathy Fackler felt like she was reliving a childhood fantasy.
You walk into the front gates of that park that you've grown up with and that has meant, everything to you. And you walk into that park with your own child now.
It was her 5-year-old son, David Fackler's first big trip to a theme park. The Fackler family of La Jolla, California, Kathy, David, Stephen, and Mark, had finally taken their long-planned trip to nearby Disneyland.
We had been in the park all day and had a great time, and it was around dinner time.
Time, they told the boys, for one last ride. They chose the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. And then it was the last moment of the last ride of a perfect day.
We came around the corner towards the platform, and the car makes a temporary stop before the unloading platform.
A temporary stop? David, 5 years old, remember, thought the ride was over. In Kathy's memory, what happened next plays back in horrifying slow motion. David did what he thought he was supposed to do. Even while his mother's arms held him in, he stuck his foot out the side of the car as if to exit. But then the car began to move again because the ride wasn't over yet.
The visitors who were waiting started yelling, "His foot's out, stop the ride, stop the ride." And I was sitting there with my arms around my kid's shoulders. It never occurred to me they were yelling at me.
The train was still moving, but David's foot was trapped inside the track underneath the car.
The next thing I knew, David was kind of clutching me and screaming, and that's it. I didn't even know how to describe. It just is so unreal.
A crowd gathered. David kept screaming. Minutes passed. It felt like hours. David Fackler's foot, stuck for 20 minutes between the track and the car, was torn in half. He had 4 surgeries, skin grafts, and lost all 5 toes.
In a moment, it turned into a dream, and it didn't become real for a very long time, even in the hospital, you know, when we were there for almost a month.
While David recovered, Kathy looked for answers. Was the ride safe? Had any changes been made to it? Why was outside help so long in coming? Had there been other serious accidents on that ride? And what about on other rides? Well, David's accident might not have been the park's fault. Kathy Fackler says she ran into what seemed like a culture of secrecy whenever she brought up the accident. Did they report the accident?
There was no reporting requirement. There's no one to report accidents to.
In fact, Kathy says she was shocked to discover that in the state of California, big amusement parks like Disney, Six Flags, and Paramount were not required to report accidents to any agency, even if a rider dies.
Despite the fact that David screamed for an hour in the middle of Frontierland during business hours, no one from the press found out about it or wrote about it. And so it just does disappear.
Was her son's accident the only one that just seemed to disappear? No, she says. It turned out there were lots of them. For example, Disney never had to report what happened to Zipporah Jacob, a 43-year-old former molecular biologist. Her husband, Hines, says Zipporah is a different woman since she rode Disney's Indiana Jones attraction in 1995.
She was a totally healthy individual. She had never had any problem whatsoever. And during the ride, she felt pain in her back of her head. By the time she arrived in the hospital, she was in a coma.
Mr. Jacob says his once brilliant wife was so badly shaken up by the Indiana Jones ride that she suffered a near-fatal brain hemorrhage. And now, he says she must wear a shunt to drain fluids, must take dozens of pills every day, and will for the rest of her life, and is unable to work as a molecular biologist anymore. Disney declined our repeated offers to comment on camera, but did respond to our written questions. Regarding allegations of brain injuries resulting from its rides, the company said, quote, "It has never been confirmed that our attractions cause such injuries." But the Jacobs lawyer, Barry Novak, tells a different story.
We have found out that for the last approximately 4 years, there have been over 60 injuries, and at some point in time, the brain substance just cannot withstand those dynamics. It's sort of like shaken baby syndrome.
Novak says only a few of those 60 serious brain injuries occurred in Disney's parks, but he claims several Disney rides seem to cause other injuries. In fact, Novak says in 2 of his cases, Disney provided records showing that more than 600 head, neck, and back injury complaints were made to the company just about Indiana Jones and Splash Mountain in the past 3 years. But how many of those incidents did Disney report to Cal OSHA, the state safety agency?
The written report that I got back from Cal OSHA was there had been no reported injuries for those rides, at least for the year 2000, 2001, which was the 2 years that they were supposed to be keeping records on a voluntary basis.
And he says there were hundreds more similar complaints about other rides. Disney settled with the Jacobs for an undisclosed sum in 1999, though the company denied liability or responsibility. But since then, Novak has taken on other cases against Disney. During one of them, less than 2 months ago, the judge scolded Disney for failing to turn over injury records. Willful bad faith, the judge called it. Disney denied the allegation, saying a clerical error had delayed release of the information.
So what about Kathy? Has she found a way to do this? We'll tell you the answer when we return, and we're going to also look at those reports that from OSHA.gov has told us. So stick around. Tonight we're focusing on those amusement park rides. How safe are they? Well, how safe are they? Well, we just figured out from one case from years ago, and the reason why we're dedicating this half hour to this is basically because of an accident that happened a few days ago at Florida when a man over 300 pounds died because of a seatbelt issue. So the question is, what else does Disney have to say? And what does Kathy plan to do? Once again, here's Keith Morrison.
As for Kathy Fackler, she grew frustrated by what she claims was Disney's lack of cooperation. So she turned to the California state legislature instead.
Accidents should be treated as hard-earned lessons, not dirty secrets to be hidden away.
And after a year of tireless research, lobbying, and testifying, the California law changed. On January 1st, 2000, Kathy saw the rewards of her first long battle.
The law mandates that the parks have to report injuries to the state. They have to allow the state to come out and perform an accident investigation. They have to maintain the accident site just like a crime scene. They can't be cleaning up evidence before the state gets there.
Which they could do before.
Oh, sure.
Just this March, the Walt Disney Company shut down a ride after reporting 3 accidents in 3 weeks in the new Disney theme park. Disney says the company temporarily and voluntarily closed the attraction for adjustments after a few guests complained about the roughness of the ride. And just last week, Disney reopened an overhauled Roger Rabbit ride 10 months after a little boy was trapped beneath it and severely brain damaged. Disney says the ride was safe from the start, but just the same, it went beyond state orders to fix problems. Disney, saying it bases its reputation on safety, also erected more warning signs. But if disclosure was difficult to achieve in California, there's one state, America's theme park capital, where it's been almost impossible.
Florida has the largest segment of amusement park business of anywhere in the U.S.
Right here around Orlando, Florida, are 2 parks owned by Universal Studios, SeaWorld, Busch Gardens, and 4 Disney theme parks. None of these parks is required to tell the public anything about accident records.
Those theme parks are exempt from the state law. They don't have to report any accidents, not even if a rider dies. And the consumer has no way of knowing how many injuries a ride at Disney World or Universal Studios Florida have caused to paying customers.
Nor does any government or consumer organization have any right to set one foot in any of these parks to inspect the rides for safety. The state has no involvement beyond an annual consultation. And why is that? Because in Florida, lawmakers have allowed the big theme parks to police safety themselves. Industry critics call it the Florida loophole.
I was deeply disturbed by the fact that this self-protection took precedence over safety.
Remember, the industry claims that theme parks are safe places to be, and this man agrees with them.
If it's not broken, don't try to fix it.
Florida Congressman Cliff Stearns chairs the House Subcommittee on Commerce, Trade, and Consumer Protection. That's the very body that insists on federal standards for other consumer products, but has decided not to apply the same kind of federal standards to theme parks.
We have no statistics that shows there are any fatalities at Disney World in 28 years.
With all due respect, Congressman, how could you have statistics? You don't know. You have no oversight.
Do you know how many injuries have happened there?
Well, I just told you, they have not had any fatalities.
But in November of 2000, a patron was killed on this ride, Splash Mountain, when he inexplicably removed himself from the water ride at Disney World while it was still moving. The cause of death was ruled rider misconduct. Nonetheless, the death was officially unreported. Do you know how many injuries they've had?
Injuries they might have, but not of a nature that it's crippling for life.
Tell that to Barry Novak. He claims he has clients to prove otherwise.
People have suffered either serious head injuries, such as bleeds in the brain, or head, neck, and back injuries sufficient to require continuing medical care.
So the question to you then is, who are you representing? Are you representing the parks, or are you representing the millions of people who go to the parks?
I'm representing good government.
In its response to our story, the Disney company wrote in part, "Defining what should be a reportable accident is not as easy as it may seem. Broadly worded definitions produce exaggerated and often inaccurate statistics, which can be misleading to the public. And the congressman worries about a legal free-for-all if entertainment companies, Disney included, are required to publicly report all of the data about accidents. He worries about lawyers, like Barry Novak.
Disney alone, for example, says, and rightly so, it has more than 1,000 engineers that are constantly fine-tuning these rides, looking at them to make sure they're safe.
Well, if it's so safe and no need to be concerned, why hide it?
And Kathy Fackler adds, won't patrons be safer, even if there are lawsuits?
They worry that data sharing is going to lead to the destruction of their $9 billion industry, and I think that data hiding is going to lead to the destruction of more families.
Give me a break.
And so Kathy Fackler is campaigning for a new federal law authorizing the Consumer Product Safety Commission to inspect and oversee all permanent parks all across the country, including Florida. It's an industry that claims to be a very safe place to have fun, and it may well be. But now its critics are demanding, prove it.
We want to see what the safety record is. We're loading very small children onto heavy machinery, open moving vehicles. That's a dangerous undertaking, and it demands a public accounting. That's all I'm asking for, is a public accounting.
That's right. So what are the statistics by date? We'll tell you in a moment. Almost this half hour, we've been focusing on amusement park accidents. We've heard from Kathy Heckler, from a young woman named Kathy, who fought to get the loophole in Florida banned because Florida wanted to police themselves. But in the wake of what happened this year from over a 300-pound man who died, the question still remains, are these amusement park rides safe? Well, according to experts and owners, yes, there are. But look at the accidents. Just almost a year ago, employee killed from fall from amusement park ride. August, employee incurs restoration with foot in go-kart. 2019, amusement park ride golf cart. All 2019. Broken bones, electrical shock. Employee struck amusement park and fractures arm. And 2014, amputates finger when caught by a park ride wheel. Worker dies after falling from amusement park ride. That was from 2011, almost 10 years ago. Climbing instructor killed in fall from tower. Employee is stuck, killed by moving part of the amusement park ride. This is from OSHA. The biggest one ever, but it hasn't been every other latest. Yes, it's going back to years ago. 1984. This all started October 1984. All this was started. Even the manual. And if you were to look at from OSHA or the ridesdatabase.org, it would tell you a lot of things. So how can you make sure you don't get into an accident? For riders of all ages, let's give you some tips. Read, obey posted rules and restrictions. Make sure the ride is appropriate for the rider. Securely latch all restraints and use grab bars. That's what would have happened to a 300-pound man. Stay in a locked and loaded position for the entire ride cycle. Take frequent breaks if you're running high G rides. Stop riding before you get excessively tired. Drink plenty of foods throughout your stay in amusement park or carnival. Never ride under the influence of alcohol and drugs. And don't board a ride if it looks poorly mandated or the operator's initiative. Now, for parents, this is the biggest one ever. Be cautious. Be a cautious consumer when choosing amusement park rides for your child, and ask the questions: can your child follow directions they're seated? How familiar is your child with amusement park rides? Is your child frightened? Is your child a risk taker? And how well does your child within the restraint system? Watch the ride with your child before boarding. Like, read the warning signs out loud. Point to the ride attendants. Explain that rides sometimes are temporarily. Talk about what to do if your child gets frightened, and tell children to hold on tightly with both hands. Always obey minimum height, age, weight, and health restrictions. Now, in the case of that 300-pound man, they would have told if they would have told him You can't ride this because of your weight. He would have survived. Never sneak children on rides that are too small. Use the posted height age limits as suggestions. Don't put your child on rides if he's outgrown maximum rate and height, which is limits one inch minimum limits. If you can't catch your child to stay seated with hands and feet inside, don't let him or her ride. Don't put children on rides that they're afraid of. Follow any special instructions about seating, overloading. Always do safety equipment provided, but be aware of its limitations. Watch all extreme heights, including feet, if the ride has open sides. Teach small children what to do to get separated from you. Trust your gut. And remember that amusement park rides aren't always magic. If we follow these tips, and us parents, we can make sure that everyone can be a safe ride, and that the friends and family of that 300-pound man can finally get their day in court. Justice will be served. And that legal loophole in Florida can be banned. Now, I might plan on talking with Kathy Fackler, the woman who talked with Dateline. I might have her come on the show. I might send her an email, but we don't know what will happen. In 2 weeks, 2 weeks from Tuesday or Thursday, we're going to go back to the field. That's right, you heard me. We're going to go back to the field. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to go back to the field. We're going to talk about the same thing. About April, the 12th or the 14th, we're going to talk to some people who've heard about these amusement park accidents. We're going to ask the audience if they've ever been in an accident or ever heard about an accident. We're going to talk to children about this, and we're also going to give parents out there some tips and review some tips for you. So look for that in about 1 to 2 weeks, to the 12th or the 14th. We won't know what happened, but we'll keep you posted. And also coming up on Monday, the implant association test. This comes after I talked about a school in Houston that went over vowel sounds, and parents who say poor black children deserve to be educated, which was a form of racism. I crossed that line, and so that's what I have to do. We're talking about the implant association test, and we'll discuss that for you on Monday. So that's all for this edition of Give Me a Break Saturday going to Sunday. We'll see you again for Give Me a Break Monday. For all of us here, Give Me a Break and YouTube, good night.